Hey everyone! Today we're diving into an interesting chapter of history. Let's travel back now. It's the 7th century and the Muslim Arabs have just conquered North Africa. But instead of forcing their religion upon everyone, Islam gradually spread across West Africa through peaceful means. Traders, scholars, and missionaries traveled the vast Sahara Desert, sharing not just goods but ideas and beliefs. Many African rulers saw the benefits of adopting this new religion, and some even converted themselves. It wasn't just a spiritual decision. Islam brought with it new ways of governing, building, and living daily life. But the spread wasn't always easy. While Islam peacefully moved into many areas, in others, there was resistance. For instance, some regions with strong traditional beliefs pushed back against the new religion. Even so, for over 6 centuries, Islam continued to spread gradually wherever trade routes connected Africa to the wider Muslim world, from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea. As Islam spread, it wasn't always practiced the same way everywhere. In many places, it blended with traditional African rituals and customs, creating unique local versions of the religion. And it wasn't just about religion. Islam also introduced new ideas in administration, law, and architecture, shaping the way many African societies functioned. Now, let's think about why so many African leaders were open to adopting this foreign religion. Islam wasn't just a set of spiritual beliefs, it was a complete way of life. It offered guidance on everything, from individual behavior to social norms, from economic practices to political systems. This comprehensive approach to life made Islam appealing, especially to rulers looking to strengthen their kingdoms. The spread of Islam across Africa wasn't a simple one-time event. It was a complex process that happened in waves. First, it spread across North Africa during the 7th century through the conquests of the Umayyad Caliphate. Then, in the 8th century, Islamized Berbers carried the religion along the trade routes of West Africa, reaching as far as Lake Chad. From there, it spread eastward to regions like the Mali and Songhai empires. Meanwhile, in East Africa, Islam arrived through Arab traders crossing the Red Sea and settling along the Swahili coast. Here, Islam took root more quickly, especially from the 12th century when merchants from the Persian Gulf arrived. Over time, being Swahili became synonymous with being Muslim, highlighting how deeply the religion influenced the local culture. But the spread of Islam wasn't without its challenges. In East Africa, for instance, Christianity was already well established in regions like Nubia and Ethiopia, and it took centuries for Islam to gain a foothold there. Even when it did, some Christian kingdoms, like Abyssinia, resisted Islamic influence for centuries. Throughout Africa, there were other groups who clung tightly to their traditional beliefs, resisting the spread of Islam. The Mossi people, for example, actively fought against the religion's expansion by attacking cities like Timbuktu in the 15th century. And then, there was the arrival of the Portuguese, who brought Christianity to Africa's coasts and challenged the spread of Islam, particularly along the Swahili coast. And now let's dive deeper into why many African leaders decided to embrace Islam beyond just spiritual reasons. One of the key factors was trade. Islam and trade were closely linked, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. When African leaders saw that adopting or at least tolerating Islam could benefit their trade connections, they were quick to consider it. Islam, after all, originated in the bustling commercial hub of Mecca, and the Prophet Muhammad himself had been a merchant. This connection made Islam not just a religion, but also a practical guide for business, with ethical rules that helped to build trust and unity among traders from different regions and backgrounds. Take the Ghana Empire, for example. While there's no strong evidence that its kings converted to Islam, they definitely saw the value in allowing Muslim merchants to operate within their borders. The capital, Kombai even had 2 distinct sections. One was a Muslim town with 12 mosques, and the other, just 10 kilometers away, was where the royal palace and traditional cult shrines were located. This setup shows how Islam and traditional beliefs coexisted, with Islam being more prominent in urban centers while traditional practices persisted in rural areas. In contrast, the Mali Empire took a different path. The kings of Mali did convert to Islam, starting with Mansa Uli, who went on a pilgrimage to Mecca in the 1260s or 1270s CE. This pilgrimage not only reinforced his faith, but also connected Mali more deeply with the broader Muslim world. The most famous of these rulers, Mansa Musa, made a legendary pilgrimage to Mecca, bringing back with him Muslim scholars, architects, and books. Under his rule, Mali became a center of Islamic learning, with mosques, Quranic schools, and universities in cities like Timbuktu gaining international fame. As Islam spread further into West Africa, it began to take root more deeply. A clerical class emerged, many of whom were of Sudanese origin, and they played a crucial role in spreading Islam to the southern parts of the region. These clerics weren't just religious leaders, they also contributed to daily life by offering prayers, performing administrative tasks, providing medical advice, and even interpreting dreams. This made them valuable members of the community and increased the appeal of Islam. For some African rulers, adopting Islam also provided political advantages. In the Kingdom of Kanem, for example, the adoption of Islam in the late 11th century may have helped legitimize a new dynasty. Islam also opened doors for diplomatic relations with North African states and allowed sub-Saharan rulers to send scholars for training, connecting them with the broader Mediterranean world. This not only increased their prestige but also brought the benefits of literacy, which was crucial for managing the vast trade networks that these empires relied on. Of course, not all rulers were eager to embrace Islam. King Sunni Ali of the Songhai Empire, for instance, was strongly anti-Muslim, but his successor, King Muhammad I, did convert and imposed Islamic law across his empire. He appointed Islamic judges, known as qadis, to oversee justice in cities like Timbuktu and Janneh. Yet, despite these efforts, many people in the rural areas of Songhai continued to hold on to their traditional beliefs. And now let's explore how ancient African beliefs coexisted with the spread of Islam across the continent. As Islam made its way into Africa, it didn't completely replace the indigenous beliefs that had been practiced for generations, especially in rural areas. Travelers like Ibn Battuta, who visited Mali around 1352 CE, observed that many local traditions remained strong. One reason for this was that Islamic teachings were initially conducted in Arabic, a language unfamiliar to most of the population outside of the educated elites in towns and cities. This language barrier made it difficult for Islam to fully penetrate the everyday lives of the average person in rural communities. Moreover, the Islam that did take root in Africa often looked different from the version practiced in the Arab world. African rulers, understanding the deep connection their people had with traditional practices, couldn't afford to completely dismiss these beliefs. In many cultures, rulers were seen as divine or semi-divine figures, and abandoning these beliefs could have destabilized their authority. Even on the Swahili coast, where Islam was perhaps most successfully adopted, traditional practices persisted. Many converts still sought to appease spirits believed to cause illness and misfortune, and ancestor worship continued alongside Islamic practices. Interestingly, in some Swahili cities, women enjoyed rights that were more favorable than those typically found under strict Sharia law. Additionally, a very un-Islamic practice emerged where cemeteries were filled with tombs containing valuable goods buried with the deceased, reflecting a blend of Islamic and traditional beliefs. The cultural impact of Islam on African society was profound, but it varied depending on the region and the period. For some groups, particularly those with skills that had been revered in traditional African societies, the arrival of Islam led to a decline in status. Metalworkers, who were once seen as possessing mystical powers because of their ability to forge metal, saw their standing diminish. The same happened to those who mined precious metals like gold and iron. On the other hand, aligning with Islam could sometimes elevate one's status. This was particularly evident in how community histories and foundation myths were rewritten to include the arrival of a founder from the East, linking the community to the broader Islamic world. However, in some cases, oral traditions managed to maintain their cultural integrity. A good example is the story of Sundiata Keita, the founder of the Mali Empire. While written histories portray him as a Muslim, oral traditions often depict him as a powerful magician tied to indigenous beliefs. Islam also brought changes to the roles of men and women in society. In some African communities where women had previously held equal or even superior status to men, the introduction of Muslim laws altered these dynamics. Societies that were once matrilineal, where lineage was traced through the mother, often shifted to a patrilineal system, reflecting Islamic influences. There were also more superficial changes, like the adaptation of Muslim names to fit African languages. Muhammad became Mamadou, and Ali became Aliyu. Clothing styles changed too, with women being encouraged to dress more modestly and adolescents to cover up. Islamic architecture left its mark as well, with mosques springing up wherever Muslim communities established themselves. However, these mosques often had local variations. For example, on the Swahili coast, mosques were built without the minarets or inner courtyards typical in other parts of the Islamic world, reflecting the unique blend of African and Islamic influences. The arrival of Islam also brought several technical innovations to Africa, including the introduction of writing, numerals, mathematics, and standardized measurements. Muslim scholars and missionaries not only brought these skills but also stayed in African communities, contributing to the exchange of knowledge. Notable Muslim travelers and chroniclers like Ibn Battuta and Ibn Khaldun documented African life during this period, providing invaluable insights. Their records, along with archaeological findings, have been crucial in reconstructing the history of ancient Africa, especially after the European colonial period, which attempted to erase much of the continent's rich history.